Hey everybody, it's Mr. Hasquin, and I'm back with more things you should know by being alive. And on this episode, I want to talk about the Battle of Blair Mountain. Now, this is something that hits home for me. I come from a family of coal miners. I broke the line, I guess, by going into teaching. But my family is a long list of coal miners going all the way back to Belgium when we still had family in Europe. Well, we still got quite a bit of family there. But anyway, I want to talk about labor in the coal fields, and we're going to go to West Virginia. So in the early 20th century, life for coal miners in southern West Virginia was relatively brutal. Miners worked long hours in dangerous conditions for low pay, often in isolated company towns where their rent, their stores, and their lives were basically controlled by the coal companies. Unions, especially the United Mine Workers of America, the UMWA, were trying to organize, but coal operators were using private detectives and blacklists and armed guards to keep the union out. Violence was quite common, and by 1920, tensions in Logan and Mingo counties of West Virginia were starting to boil over. And the spark came in Mattawan, West Virginia in 1920. So when the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency, which was hired by the coal companies, tried to evict pro-union miners, they were confronted by the Mattawan police chief, Sid Hatfield, who happened to be a union supporter. A gunfight breaks out, and several detectives were killed. Hatfield becomes a labor hero. But a year later, Baldwin Felts agents, they murdered Hatfield on the courthouse steps in broad daylight. Now, that killing outraged miners across the region. Thousands of miners began arming themselves. They were ready to march, not just for better wages, but for justice. So, in late August of 1921, 10,000 plus coal miners, many of them veterans of World War I, marched toward Logan County to confront anti-union Sheriff Don Chafin. He had raised a private army with coal company support. The miners wore red bandanas, which is given credit for the rise of the term redneck. They carried rifles, and they aimed to free Union prisoners and stop the coal company violence. Now, what followed was the largest armed labor uprising in American history. For 5 days, the miners battled Chafin's men across Blair Mountain. They used guerrilla tactics in a very rugged terrain. Airplanes supplied by the federal government bombed on the miners. They dropped bombs on the miners. Some of them even used leftover gas bombs from World War I. But it wasn't the coal companies who ended it. It was the U.S. Army. President Harding sent in federal troops and warplanes. Faced with overwhelming force and not wanting to shoot yet at U.S. soldiers, the miners finally laid down their arms. Now, nearly 1,000 miners were arrested, and many were charged with treason against the state of West Virginia. Most were acquitted, but the UMWA, United Mine Workers, lost momentum in that region for years to come. But the miners' courage inspired future labor movements. The fight at Blair Mountain became a symbol of working class resistance, even if it was just buried in textbooks for decades. I didn't learn about it in school. I learned about it from being part of a miners' family. My dad had went to Pittston, West Virginia, in the late 1980s as a way to help those guys unionize out there. But anyway, in the 2000s, Blair Mountain itself became a battlefield again, and this time it was over strip mining. And activists fought to preserve the site as a state historic landmark, and they wanted to honor those men who stood up, those men and women, who stood up for dignity, safety, and solidarity. But hey, if this is the first time you've ever heard of Blair Mountain or the Battle of Blair Mountain, you're not alone. But history isn't just made in boardrooms or capitals or on battlefields. It's made in mines and marches and on mountain ridges. Like, comment, share, follow, whatever you need to do for more things you should know by being alive. And freedom freedom to work with dignity was fought for with rifles in the hills of West Virginia by those brave coal miners against an overreaching government and corrupt system of coal companies. Thanks for watching.